Hello and welcome to part 5 of the Bardic Occasion module. And what you see behind me is the game I'm going to use to illustrate this case study. And this case study is designed for CAMS 3208 and it alone, so hopefully I'll be able to go into a little more depth with this. But what you see is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and it's the game I'm going to use to illustrate the concept of in medias res. That is, the idea that epic has this special characteristic that was called by certain Latin writers the beginning in medias res, that is, into the middle of matters or into the middle of things. And so what I'm going to do is first set it up with some reading from the Odyssey and the Iliad, I think, to show you what that means in the context of an epic, and then I'm going to show you the beginning of Knights of the Old Republic and talk about how the in medias res beginning connects the two and what that might mean for the nature of storytelling and the nature of storytelling's role in culture for both of these things, that is, as always, the ancient epic and the adventure video game. So here, famously enough, is the way the Iliad begins, as we've already talked about. Sing, goddess, the anger of Peleus' son Achilles, and its devastation, which put pains thousandfold upon the Achaeans, hurled in their multitudes to the house of Hades strong souls of heroes, but gave their bodies to be the delicate feasting of dogs, of all birds, and the will of Zeus was accomplished, since that time when first there stood in division of conflict Atreus' son, the lord of men, and brilliant Achilles. What god was it then set them together in bitter collision? Zeus' son and Leto's Apollo, who in anger at the king drove the foul pestilence along the host, and the people perished, since Atreus' son had dishonored Chryses, priest of Apollo, when he came beside the fast ships of the Achaeans to ransom back his daughter, etc., etc. So what we have is that very brief invocation, and then we're dropped into the middle of the 9th year of the war. And that's the big idea of the in medias res beginning. It's not that all of a sudden people are shooting things around you or having a battle around you. It's that the story has been going on for a long time before this part of the story, that is, the song you're listening to now, has begun. And then when that song begins, you as the audience are left to follow the clues that the bard leaves for you to figure out where you are in the story. Okay, so now let's compare that to the Odyssey. Tell me, muse, of the man of many ways, who was driven far journeys after he had sacked Troy's sacred citadel. Many were they whose cities he saw, whose minds he learned of, many the pains he suffered in his spirit on the wide sea, struggling for his own life and the homecoming of his companions. Even so he could not save his companions, hard though he strove to. They were destroyed by their own wild recklessness, fools who devoured the oxen of Helios, the sun god, and he took away the day of their homecoming. From some point here, goddess, daughter of Zeus, speak and begin our story. Then all the others, as many as fled sheer destruction, were at home now, having escaped the sea and the fighting. This one alone, longing for his wife and his homecoming, was detained by the queenly nymph Calypso, bright among goddesses in her hollowed caverns, desiring that he should be her husband. But when in the circling of the years that very year came in which the gods had spun for him his time of homecoming to Ithaca, not even then was he free of his trials, nor among his own people. But all the gods pitied him except Poseidon. He remained relentlessly angry with godlike Odysseus until his return to his own country. But Poseidon was gone now to visit the far Ethiopians. Okay, and then we go to the Council of the Gods. So it's the same thing. We're in the very last year. We're at the end of the story. And famously in the Odyssey, we'll go back and we'll have some interesting backstory, which may or may not be a lie. But in any case, the way that this epic begins is just as the Iliad began, in medias res, into the middle of things. We have to follow the clues, we have to pay attention to the bard if we want to know the backstory. But the backstory isn't really all that necessary for what's going on, and that's going to be a key component of what I'm going to talk about with regard to Knights of the Old Republic. because as you're going to see, in Knights of the Old Republic, you are thrust into a story that has been going on for a long time, and you're left to follow narrative clues, some of which you know about. If you're a fan, who is the kind of person who this game is designed for, you know about from, strangely enough, events that happened in the course of this narrative thousands of years later in the movies that we all, me at least, know and love.